We've had peace in these lands for many years now. But one of our villages burned tonight.
Right, here's my review for Warcraft. Duncan Jones here has had a really tricky job here. He had to mount two really big challenges. One, this is a video game adaptation. Two, it's a fantasy film. Two genres, or two sort of genres, that have really been hit and miss over the years. Video game movies especially, they've all been really not that great. Resident Evil is a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I quite enjoy them just for the fun of them, but they're not really a very good adaptation of the video game property. Tomb Raider is probably the closest thing we've had to a half decent one, but still, they're not quite there either. They haven't had the renaissance that the comic book industry has had with their film adaptations. But on the second hand here, we've got it as a fantasy film. Fantasy films have really been hard to make. Obviously, Lord of the Rings, the first series, really put it on a high level. You know, these films were Academy Award-winning movies and really put fantasy into the limelight and made it a real task for everything. Every fantasy film that came after it really was compared to Lord of the Rings, and they really did not live up to those expectations of fans. Even the Hobbit films didn't really live up to the expectations of the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. Some of that's to do with source material, some of that's to do with trouble behind the scenes, but really, fantasy films are one of those genres which are really quite hard. We've got elements that are obviously quite foreign, similar to sci-fi. Sci-fi is quite hard, but I think sci-fi you can sort of distance yourself a little bit more from because of usually in space or in a different world. This seems a bit more on a level with Earth. So that is also a really big challenge here for Duncan Jones to get right, to meld these two. And I think he's done a really good job here, really. If you compare this to probably the last fantasy film that came out, Seventh Son, last year, Seventh Son was a horrible film. It's at the lower end of spectrum. Lord of the Rings will be at the top end. This fits nicely somewhere in the middle. You know, he does a really nice job of integrating the different characters into the film, especially the orcs. It's really the orcs' story is the heart of it. They're really the centerpiece, and you can see he's put a lot of care and attention into the orcs and the characterization of them. And then you come to the human side of it, where I think he probably lets it down a little bit. I think his focus was a lot on getting the orcs right, the environments right, all these tricky fantasy elements, which are really quite hard to get right, and probably left thinking, if I cast good actors and give them good material, to hopefully we can pull it off with the human side a little bit easier. But I actually think that you got it around the wrong way here. The humans elements probably didn't hit as well, especially with probably around with the relationships of the humans. You can see they were definitely trying to build moments with certain characters together. There probably just wasn't quite enough of them. Where with the orcs, you really get a good sense of the community, really good sense of the hierarchy and how that really works. And you really get a sense of the characters, and you really care about the orc characters more than the humans themselves. You know, there's a few characters here, and human characters here and there, who you do sort of follow, and you do get invested into their story, but in other cases, you don't really care about them. I think there's probably a little bit of miscasting as well. The young guy who's playing the young mage, not very good. Especially if you put him up next to actors who are well above his weight. You know, he didn't work for me in the story. I think the character, in terms of what they had to do, would have worked if they had probably a better actor. He just seemed a little bit off compared to these other actors in the film. Other one, really good actor is Ben Foster. I really like Ben Foster, but I think he was miscast here. I think maybe he should have played that character. The young guy's character, and actually aged up his the Guardian character. I really should have aged that character up a bit more and had him as his apprentice or something. I think that would have probably worked a lot better in my eyes. He just seems a little bit young, Ben Foster, even though he's a brilliant actor. I really like his character work in a lot of movies. You can find him anywhere. And then you got Travis you would know him from Vikings. I think he does a pretty good job here. He's pretty much the main lead in the human side of things. He does a really good job, I think, for the most part. Here's a few moments here. I think he's got a son. This character has a son. I don't think they build that. They try to definitely have a few scenes here trying to build that relationship and cause to get that relationship going, but it didn't quite hit for me quite as strong as it should have. I think again, like the son who was cast probably didn't seem quite a fit with him. You know, if you've seen Vikings, they've got a really good dynamic because of his character in Vikings and his son really seem to match and work in that way. And here, the guy they cast as his young son in this didn't work for me for some reason. It's a bit of a funny one. It's just in the casting. I think again, if they had probably another actor there, it may have hit a little bit harder. A few more scenes maybe with them together. Another really good performance is by Paula Patton, and she plays like a half-bred orc human character. Really sexy, man. First time you see it, she's really sexy. She's sort of on the outside of the orcs a little bit. She's more of a slave. She's dragged around, and she gets involved with the humans. And that relationships with her and the humans, actually, they were some of the better relationships, I felt. Like, her conversations and her story was really, really worked for me in the film. Like, I think a bit more of that even would have been really good. Just, I think it was missing a bit. Maybe it's in the cut. Maybe some of the stuff was cut out of it. But just a few more of these character moments or moments of characters just really putting on their hearts on their sleeves sort of thing would have really built it. They had that really done well with the orcs. Talking about the orcs, Toby Kebbell, he's starting to become the apprentice to Andy Serkis in terms of motion capture, and he does a really good job here too. I noticed later on he shows up in live action, all done up in makeup. You hardly recognise him as sort of a mage type character. He's probably more of an Easter egg than anything. People, they pick up on it. But he did a really good job in the motion capture stuff. I think overall the visual effects were really good. I know that there was some originally when some of the footage was released nearly 2 years ago at Comic-Con, people were like, oh, this is looking a bit rough. But it was early on. Visual effects take a long time. You get in the compositing stage and you start layering up. And that's how you start to build up the sense of reality. You know, you're adding all the spectral highlights and all the rest of it and all those elements and getting the lighting right and all that. It takes a long time. It's not just flick a switch and do it. So I think the visual effects really worked here. Some of the story stuff is a little bit, but again, fantasy is really hard. But the shining moments, all the action scenes were really good. It didn't, the risk is it would have felt a little bit hokey with the orcs and stuff, being all CG fighting humans and things like that. We've seen it before. It's probably the last Hobbit movie was a good example of where it didn't work. They had a lot of CG elements and it didn't work quite as well, but here it really does work. And again, I think a lot of it's because you're invested into these characters a bit more, so you're really taken in with the story a bit more in these action scenes. So visually, I think it's a really stunning film. I think ILM did the visual effects on this one, done a really good job. Again, Duncan Jones, this is follow-up from Source Code and Moon. Really two good movies I really liked. I think I really quite liked this one as well. Again, it's not your high-end sci-fi, not sci-fi, not your high-end fantasy movie. Like, it's not as good as the original Lord of the Rings trilogy. And then at the bottom again, you got your Seventh Son, which is really crappy. This sits really nicely in the middle, somewhere between those two. And if you're going to put the Hobbit movies in that, again, this is probably slightly around the same sort of vein as a Hobbit, probably slightly better. But, a little bit more character stuff, it would have been really good. Because I think they nailed the action stuff. And also probably at the start, they were jumping around a little bit, trying to get you to know the world a bit more. So they were jumping around and names of places and things, and you sort of mind boggled a little bit, like knowing where you were sort of for a start. But after a while that settled down and it was more linear, but it was just a little bit jumpy around, and a bit more explanationally, so you get involved. But really good job here. I think it's doing really well internationally from what I've heard. It's really set up here to move forward in the series. I think it'd be really good to see what they can do if they can get a Warcraft 2 going. I think they can really build on from what they've established here really well. So that's my review of Warcraft. It's a recommendation for me if you love fantasy films, if you're a gamer. For once, this is probably one of the best films based on a game so far. This is no Mario Brothers. This is high end stuff. So this is a lot more stuff. We've got more adaptations later coming in the year. We've got Assassin's Creed. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. And this could possibly be the start of the video game to movie adaptation renaissance. All right, guys, that's me, and I will catch you later. Cheers. Thanks.